Hello YouTube, Robin Hood Bricks here, and I'd heard that a few of you were missing the super secret police. So I thought I'd do the biggest SSP build ever to help the most helpful force of Brick Nottingham live up to their full potential. Now, I don't think there's ever been a real riot in Brick Nottingham, but, you know, what if there was? What if the normally peaceful people didn't suddenly respect authority? Who would you call? Well, of course you would call the super secret police. Everyone's friend. So they would clearly need some hardcore kit just to keep the peace. And that's why I bought this box of bits from eBay. To make my first Exoforce set. Yeah, a while back, a few of you suggested that the Exoforce range was something I should really consider for a really big super secret police build. And the one that I went for, you might be able to tell from the orange pile of bricks, was the absolutely over the top, massive and very impressive 7706 mobile defense tank from 2006, which for the SSP really would have to be a mobile offense tank, you'd imagine, but it is brilliant. And we've got these huge, great big tracks on the sides, 4 of them, these movable sort of pivotable kind of rocket launcher things with radar domes, which I like very much for targeting, presumably, kind of nose gun, and this massive over-the-top swivel pivot gun with laser sight on there, with a sort of laser button you can press there. That must be for targeting as well. And even this flick fire disc shooter, which only had 1 disc in it. It can take 10, but it's not that great anyway, so I'm not really missing out there. There's a couple of parts missing, nothing too vital, and a couple of stickers, one off here and a couple here that were actually sticker cross assembly, which I wouldn't want anyway because, well, if I'm going to use these parts in a different order, as we'll see later on, then that wouldn't quite work. So yeah, this is a really good start, and it was sort of my idea that these guys would have gone to an arms fair or something like that to try and buy some weapons, and they probably went with authority to buy something quite small, maybe like some tasers for completely reasonable force on the public. But instead they kind of clambered onto this and got very enamored with it, and this lady jumped straight into the cockpit and thought, oh yes, do you know what we need in Brick Nottingham? We totally need one of these. And the guy who was mounted on the turret thought, yeah, I think you're right. Maybe we should just write a cheque for one of these and spend most of the mayor's budget, Mayor Faye Catanalot, of course. So yeah, that is absolutely awesome. And it's got great big stickers on the side, AT02 and these sort of cog things on and loads of symbols. And I'm hoping when we get rid of all of the orange, that I'll be able to recycle some of these stickers into my Ninjago scene. And that's just pulled off there. Yeah, it is a bit fragile, if that's one criticism, because the other thing I sort of thought was, if these guys saw this in the showroom, so to speak, and it was in this bright orange, then they would decide to not buy an orange one for themselves, because they would need it in their own black and white livery, of course. So what I'm going to do is actually make this much more SSP-y by changing the whole colour scheme. But then, dun dun dun, I had an even better idea, because this has some problems, essentially. The tracks don't go around too well because these arms are just a bit too wibbly. We've got a lot of this sort of kind of ugly section of lift arms visible. We've got kind of gaps here and stuff like that. I do like these flaming exhausts coming out the back. That's good. And the armament's excellent. Not enough, if anything. But yeah, the thing is, it just takes up far too much space. I mean, if I put this on some road plates, well, it would take up the pavements and the road, I think, of about 2 of them. And if you look at the instructions for this set, 7706, and go all the way to the bottom, way past the bit where it's kind of looking at the other sets in the line, you actually get an alternate build. Oh, now look at that. Called the Advanced Tactical Unit. It kind of looks like Sir Killalot off Robot Wars, if you ask me, and looks, well, miles better. I mean, it's using most of the armament. It's got the tracks on, albeit sort of double width and much, much shorter. I thought that would be a much better use for all these parts. So this was quite a cheap auction, thankfully, probably because of its missing bits and so on. So I figured what I'd do is try and recreate, first of all, the advanced tactical unit using these parts, and then a stage 2 kind of SSP it up by adding black and white wherever we've got orange in some nice bands, and adding all the lovely stickers to it. So it's got really big logos on every surface and says Super Secret Police all over the place. And then I'll try and keep the good features of, say, the Gatling gun with the laser sight and these rocket pods as much as I can. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So first stage, let's take this apart. Get used to not seeing it again. This is the last time you'll see it in this format. Oh, actually, the tracks are going relatively well. You see, let's see its problem. It's just a bit weak. Well there. But anyway, yeah, this is the last time you're going to see it in this format before it is reconstructed into its brand new format. Wholly appropriate for public use. But it's not as simple as that, sadly, because I thought, well, hold on, where are the alternate build instructions? And, well, they don't exist. There is a link, actually, to the website for what was Exoforce, but it doesn't seem to be available anymore. All they've got is that picture, so it's a bit difficult to kind of piece together just from one picture with all of these complicated sort of setups around tracks and so on. But fortunately, after an absolute trawl of the internet, I managed to pick up about 25 different pictures, which are kind of the screenshots of each stage. It doesn't tell you what parts are involved in each bit of that build, but, well, as long as we've got those 25 sort of steps along the way, it's kind of like old-fashioned instructions, but they didn't tell you what parts were being added each time. They didn't even tell you where they were adding them. You're just going to have to do a spot the difference between the pictures each time and do it that way. So given that I have a bit of experience around Lego, I think I should be able to do it. So anyway, wish me luck and wave goodbye to this. Oh, I do like it. It's just too big. Good, good. Well, that build was probably the most complicated I've done for a while, just working from those few pictures. It wasn't bad in the main, but there were a couple of bit with all the Technic sort of lift arms and all the different Technic pins and all that that were quite hard to see exactly what was going where. But it is done. So, drum roll. Da, 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 da. There it is. Oh, every SSP officer's dream. An absolute huge sort of mech come tracked tank, the advanced tactical unit, and wow, it is advanced and it's got to be fairly tactical looking like that with all those guns. Tactical's just code for guns, basically. I always think. But yeah, these two leapt straight on this one even faster than they leapt on the previous build, and it used most of the pieces. I've got a fair few bits of Technic left and just one more of these things as well for, well, a potential second laser dome as it's now become. I think I preferred it with the missiles, I must say, because the other weakness is it didn't actually use our laser brick in the end, which seems a bit of a waste. But we do have our disc shooter attached to this more precise looking sort of sniper type weapon as opposed to the massive Gatling gun on the other side, which must be firing out serious quantities of lead for peacekeeping. I mean, golly, you can imagine the cost of something like this. They'd have to spend responsibly and to budget to get their hands on one of these, you'd imagine, with you know, enough weapons to fairly and justly protect Brick Nottingham. But nonetheless, I'm very happy with the result, I must say. The biggest thing, or rather the smallest thing, that is awesome about it is the fact that its footprint is so vastly reduced now. I mean, that's not even as long as a base plate. Maybe when you take into account the overhanging cool exhausts, which we've managed to keep, which is nice, and this pod on the top, it's quite long. But, you know, just its literal footprint is so much smaller, and these double tracks look much more mean, and it drives a lot better as well now. because it's got that sort of smaller wheelbase, especially when it's not being obstructed. Yeah, so I think the biggest weakness, though, is the cockpit, in the fact that it didn't really have one at all. I mean, it's got this glass canopy piece, but there was nothing to attach a man to whatsoever in there. I've actually added 2 of the spare 1x8 plates just in there that are kind of suspended in midair at the moment, just so I could put the SSP lady back in the driving seat. So we're definitely going to need some serious work there. We also haven't eliminated any of these gaps down the side of the cockpit, which I don't like. Oh, and yeah, looks like the tracks could do with a bit more securing in place. Yeah, that's not ideal, is it? So yeah, I'm very happy with it, with the shoulder pads, these side units and stuff like that. I think it looks really great, but it'll look even better when we've got it in black and white for the super secret police. Now, much like its predecessor, this is quite fragile actually, both in operation now and, well, you can see its wibble, and in construction, especially at some points. Every time you put something on, something else fell off. So it reminded me very much of my Atlantis pyramid in that respect. There are still gaps, and the back's even worse actually. I mean, the back looks like a construction site, but you can't have everything. So I think I'll try and make that a bit better. I mean, it's yelling out for a great big engine block or something hanging beneath here, maybe some cargo, or maybe something for all the men to kind of run out of with their riot shields and all the rest of it. And this looks a bit unfinished on the back as well. I think we need the rockets back rather than this laser pod as well. Rockets in that top section, because I thought it looked very much like a sort of multi-launcher a la sort of Warhammer 40k or something like that. So that's something to improve. And I think this glass piece might just need replacing, so it does have sides, and that would help as well. And I really don't want to have an SSP man mounted on the gun XO4 style. I think that should be encased a bit more with some more workings, and maybe a sight of some sort, and then he can be in, well, maybe a second cockpit down here, or like I said, in the cargo bay behind. And I want to incorporate a lot more pieces into it. I got this one, which is a sort of scope with crosshairs, I suppose, which is part number 61794, get it right, which is also a barnacle piece. But yeah, I reckon if we had that sort of either mounted on one of these guns or maybe in front of the driver, that would be a really good touch. That's from one of my mini brick hauls. And another thing that I'm considering incorporating is this, the insectoid stinger from loads of sets back in the, was it 80s or 90s? And there's all sorts of sound effects on these, sort of launch sound, a wibble sound and a ribbit sound. So you can sort of do a bit of a rap with this. Anyway, that's my attempt at a mixing desk. And I was thinking of incorporating this into one of the arms. I mean, it's definitely big and heavy enough. It's just whether the colour scheme really clashes. I could use it under the sea instead as a plant like that, where you can press the button and light it up. Though I'm not sure the sound effect really works in that context. But yeah, you'll have to tell me what you think about that, because I think we're going to be doing a part 2 of this where I try and incorporate some of these pieces. Another thing was to reintroduce that light brick and either use that red bar piece again, or I had one spare left over optical fibre piece as well, which I could use to sort of bend the light around to a different place. So I'm not sure how useful that is, given it's so subtle. So yeah, I'll have to decide if I'm going to use that as well. As for the stud shooter, or rather disc shooter, I think I lose the disc every time I move this thing. So basically, I think I'll definitely be getting rid of that, and I nearly lost my only disc. So yeah, I think there's lots of improvements that we can be making with this. Not the least, turning it to black and white, covering it with loads of red and blue sirens, of course, putting a SSP logo on every flat surface there is, better cockpit, filling in the gaps, and well, just more stuff, basically, to make it, well, you guessed it, packed and stacked. All right, well, there's phase 1 of our build done. We've got the basic construction, but phase 2 is turning it into our SSP improved version. And I've got a bit of time today, so I'm going to make a start. And I'm going to start on this top sort of pod section, because it's kind of annoying me with that one poultry laser beam coming out of the front. So I'm going to do a black and white version, and the base piece of this 8x8 grid comes in black, so I'll use that. And for the 8x8 fuselage piece on the top, well, that comes in white, so I'm going to use a white piece for that, for our black and white theme. And then I'm going to add as many Technic holes in the other sides as possible, so I can have the most rockets imaginable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. And although I could just line up loads and loads of flick-fire missiles, you know me, I like a bit of dynamism in my builds. So some are going to just be in the housing with a sort of flick-fire missile piece, a yellow cone, because I think that would be good contrast, and a red flashing light. Some are going to be the same, but with a blue flashing light, because why not have flashing lights on your rockets as well? Yeah, why not? But I also want to have some that are actually in the process of being fired, kind of like the scene that I had around the Daily Bugle building, or the Brick Nottingham Post building, with antimatter firing off rockets from his flying disc and so on. So I'm going to do something similar using these sort of swirly whirly sort of energy effect pieces, and then a hollow 1x1 trans-orange stud on the back to represent some missiles being fired. So I can have one sort of lodged in the front of one of these holes, and then I can have another one a bit further back in firing, maybe with sort of this pole slightly recessed. So what I'm going to do is basically put a 1x1 modified plate in the back of there, and that will attach still to here because there aren't any studs on that second section there. And then I can actually have this going into that brick there, meaning it's slightly back from the second one that I'm going to have further out on the next level up. Then I can add another standard blue one, another standard red one, and mount that into my setup. There we go. And then I can put that on like that. And then we've got one rocket being fired. And then for the second row, I can have more just in their housing waiting to go. Red, blue. And then I can have the second one being fired, held on by another 1x1 hollow stud. And that one can just be pushed into the hole that remains for it. So it looks like that. And then I've got two rockets being fired off at a very guilty target, but all slightly staggered in their position of being fired, and I like that a great deal. And then on the back, I figure that one should be almost fully exited with its fire. That's the one that's fully out, and the one that's just being fired off right now, I can have a Technic half pin with another energy effect piece being sort of the back blast from there. So I reckon that is a much better example of that, much brighter, and I've got loads and loads of space for a nice big SSP logo on both sides, and I did buy more of those sticker sheets from the drop ship, so I'll be able to do that next time. I will take the idea of adding on this sort of central raised bit on here. I think that looks really good actually, obviously in white or black, but that is my start for my SSP version. What do you think? Well, that's just about all I've got time for, but for those of you who were missing the super secret police, I think this part 1 of 2 is hopefully sating your need. I mean, this thing is absolutely great, isn't it? By the time I've added loads more stuff and made loads of improvements like this one to the top section up here, covered it in stickers and all the rest of it, it's going to be absolutely awesome. So I will get on with doing the second part of this soon, but I think I'm going to have to do a more brief one on Monday. Just probably do that one I've been dying to show you that's quite good fun for the city. But anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching. It is appreciated. Do remember to like, comment and subscribe for more awesome LEGO videos. And if you value this channel, there are many ways in which you can support it. Do check out the links in the description below. And if you want to send something to the channel, you can, to the usual PO box address. And as I said, next time we'll get on with my mystery build, then a haul, and then hopefully we'll come back to the second part of this, or maybe it'll be the second part of the pyramid. We got so many projects on at the moment. Oh, good problem to have though. So yeah, until then, see you. Yeah, just got to make sure these wheels don't keep falling off every time I drive this thing.